Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall. We're going to pick through the bones of the general election and look into the crystal ball for the future. Stats gleaned from the Electoral Reform Society. We'll then go on to have a look at the international scene. So, Robert, have you got over it yet?
Yes. I think I was fairly inured in advance. I did a couple of candid post-mortem interviews with the media in the Channel Islands on the Friday, and then I went to bed.
Right, okay, let's have a look, see where we are. There was a turnout of 60.5%, which wasn't very good, out of 48 million eligible voters. So we've done a rough calculation, haven't we? And we reckon about 29 million rather, actually took the vote.
That's right.
And as things are at the moment, bearing in mind the distribution of votes, etc., 57.8% of the voting population are unrepresented.
I think that's a reasonable calculation, Tony. Can't dispute that.
Yeah, so there we are. Right, let's start off then. Labour, 34% of the vote, got 9.7 million votes, 411 seats.
Yes. It shows how first past the post can be quite skewed in certain circumstances, and certainly with that proportion of the votes and getting this number of seats, I think is historic, if I can put it like that.
It's an incredible situation. Of course, we did sort of anticipate it from the polling companies, didn't we?
We did, yes. In terms of the result, it wasn't a surprise. It could have been worse based on some of the polls, with the Conservatives coming in with less than 100 seats, but they got 121. Not very good, and it's going to take certainly 5, probably 10 years to rebuild. I was, funny enough, on a call with Conservatives abroad yesterday morning, having a sort of post-mortem discussion, and some people observed that there was large volatility amongst the electorate, which could turn the other way. I think that's a little bit of wishful thinking. So I think it's 10 years to rebuild the party and the policies.
I mean, looking at the Conservative result, 24% of the vote, 6 million seats, 121. What about the choice of the date and everything else?
Well, I did a rather embarrassing interview with you, I remember, on the when I said
no money was involved.
No money was involved, but I think I said, yes, it was the day Sunak called the election in, what was it, late May, early June, where I said, it'll be the third Thursday in November, and that very afternoon he announced it. And I think you had to put a caveat against the interview that you'd done with me. Absolutely stupid.
Yeah. So stupid timing. The 5 pledges. Well, inflation came down naturally. Politicians can't control inflation, can they?
They can't. They have very, very little control over it. Those are macroeconomic and political issues, and it was coming down. And on that basis, he should have waited till November, and after the U.S. presidential election. But I guess we'll come on to that.
We've got that. We've got that certainly on the list. So how do you've said it could take 2 more cycles, i.e., 10 years. For them to get back into power, if anyone wants them, of course. But are there any sort of historical precedents that we can take a look at?
Well, no, there aren't. I mean, most modern governments run out of puff and ideas after 13 or 14 years. We've had historic examples of that. You have to go back to the days of Robert Walpole or Lord Liverpool in the 18th and 19th, early 19th century, respectively, to get longer administrations. But of course, things were different. I think my concern is, if you look at the Conservative MPs who were re-elected, they tend to be mostly the old hands.
Yeah,
there are very few new faces on the block, and so I mean, people like David Davis, Jeffrey Clifton Brown, and so on, who have personal followings got back. There are very, very few young people. So I think it is going to be 10 years. And I suspect the next Conservative Prime Minister, if there's going to be one, hasn't yet been elected.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're putting their hats in the ring so far, aren't they, for leadership?
Exactly. And, it's not a particularly stimulating group. They've all been associated with the previous administration. I understand from my meeting yesterday that things will get going over the summer, and they hope to conclude the election of the new leader, quote, at the party conference in early October. Although whether they've got the money or the people to go to the party conference is, of course, an unrelated matter.
They could do it in your back room, perhaps.
Yeah, they could. Yes. I charge a very modest rent. I'm not sure the planning people on Alderney would allow it, but there we are.
Well, hopefully they wouldn't notice it, but you never know. There we are. Let's come on to the Lib Dems. They did exceptionally well. And, given the fact they were doing all these stupid pranks, I mean, I said to Chrissy, I just can't believe what this guy is up to. But it seems to have worked. 12% of the vote, 3.5 million, and they end up with 72 seats.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I make two observations on that, Tony. They actually got about the same number of seats as they would have done with one or two forms of proportional representation.
Yeah.
So I think they have a bit of a moral dilemma on proportional representation going forward. And I think the other thing, particularly in what I call the south of England, the home counties, quite a lot of what I call the centre left of the Conservative Party did vote for Lib Dems, and where Susan and I voted in Tunbridge Wells, that fell to the Lib Dems.
As did Woking.
Yeah.
So a whole load of them, Guildford, I believe, as well. So ones that, were really safe Conservative seats suddenly have evaporated, and by substantial majorities.
Yes. No, they're quite good majority. So I think what they obviously have to sort of make some more harder, serious formulation of policy and get away from outdoor gymnastics of the general election campaign.
Now, I hate to do this because he's a good friend of ours, but the Laird of Dunblane, Mr. McPherson, we've got to mention the Scot Nats, 2.5%, 724,000 votes, end up with 9 seats. Are they on the way out?
Well, they're going to be subdued for quite a long time, in my view. Clearly, Scottish independence it will not really be on the agenda. They're discredited by some of the activities of past senior people in the party. And I think Labour are back in their natural stamping ground, the sort of the heartlands, the Glasgow Edinburgh belt, Labour's back to where they were in Scotland, and will do its best, and I think quite strongly, to hold on to those seats.
Because devolution was set up by Blair, yes,
it was, and I think he probably deeply regrets it now. He's not.
but certainly he had his eye to the main chance in terms of saying, right, if we give the Scots a bit more power, we'll be in a situation where we're guaranteed to keep him power in Scotland for an indefinite period, and he got it wrong.
He got it wrong. It was naive. They've been out of prominence in Scotland for certainly over a decade now. They're coming back. I think one of the issues, though, is how much money they can afford to pour into Scotland.
Yeah,
Scotland has poorer health, weaker education system, unemployment, a number of industrial problems. So I think I think they're going to have to put money in, but how much they will put in, I think, is going to be a matter of deep debate, and that may cause some conflicts in Scotland. Can't hear you, Tony. Tony,
So, yeah, it's
Tony,
okay.
okay, sorry.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, yes, it's sorry.
Yeah. I was fiddling around, which I shouldn't do.
Sorry,
Um,
sorry.
Smack bottom, but there we are. Okay, so we've dealt with Scotland. We then come on Sinn Féin. They got 0.7% of the votes, 210,000, and
Yeah.
theoretically 7 seats, but they never turn up. Do you think
Well,
the time has come where they should?
time has come to where they should turn up, and particularly if they are looking for unification, if I could use that word, in Ireland, I think they're going to have to do that and swallow their pride. I mean, personally, I still think unification is some way away, and I'm not sure whether Southern Ireland wishes to take on a lot of the economic liabilities and social liabilities which are quite profound in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's it's a bit more than Irish emotional nationalism, frankly.
But in my view, they should be in Westminster because
Yeah.
what's the point of their electorate voting for them in the knowledge that they're not going to effectively get representation?
Precisely, and I hope, and actually, I expect them to come under some sort of pressure on that as the current Parliament unfolds, Tony.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Independence, 2.8% of the vote, 805 thousand votes, 5 seats, and of course, this is where it seems to me the Islamic vote suddenly came in. So plus Corbyn, of course, who's a sort of associate member, isn't he?
Yeah. Well. I mean, there are pockets, if I could put it like that, of Islamic density in the UK, in some of the Midland and northern cities, and this is reflected. They also interestingly enough have very high postal votes because the patron of the family likes to
the alpha male.
Alpha male likes to advise how the people in the family should vote.
Yeah. And the only way to guarantee the way they vote is to make sure it goes in and he scrutinises it before it's submitted, as opposed to them rocking up at the polling station and, oh, he's not here, let's change it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I suppose you call that Islamic democracy, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, okay, let's come on to reform, because this is an interesting one. 14% of the vote, 4.1 million, 5 seats.
Yeah, well, again, they reform is going to be on the proportional representation bandwagon. I think they got two types of vote. One is what I call some of the right of the Tory party, and also in the north of England, what I call votes from the traditional, if you can still call them, blue collar workers, and so on, from the north, the northeast, and so on. They did quite well. So they had a sort of amalgam of voters, but 5 seats. I mean, my personal view is that the UK Reform Party is more of a movement than a party. It comes under the command, if I could put it like that, of that buoyant character Nigel Farage, and he's already stamped his authority, if that is word on it, by removing one or two people like Ben Habib, who were quite prominent. So while he's there, he will be a force, and I suppose he'll carry on the sort of antics that he did in the European Parliament. But he knows how to get the headlines.
Yes, absolutely. And when you sort of look at the assortment of new MPs and everything else, he's probably the only one with any real charisma.
Absolutely, and you see, I think the other thing is that he provides a rather dilemma for the Conservative Party. Do they try to pitch their policies more to the right to regain those voters who voted for reform, or not. And I think that's good. That in that way they will lose the centre ground. I think I actually liken Starmer to a sort of modern Clement Attlee. Actually, I think he's quite a relatively unassuming compared with some of his predecessors, and quite modest in his own ambitions. So, but I think he will try to make as broad a centre ground as he can, so that he keeps a lot of what people who might defect to the Lib Dems or Tory. So I think he will keep centre. But that poses its own dilemma, Tony, because you pointed out there's 411 seats, I think, and the payroll vote committee chairs and so on, that might soak up 150, perhaps 200 people. So there'll be a couple of hundred idle hands on the back benches who will get bored with just going through the eye lobby and nodding, and they idle hands make mischief, Tony.
And they're already saying that there is a little bit of hassle with Anja Rayner, who represents the left wing, doesn't she now?
Yeah, she does. I mean, if Starmer's smart, he'd try to ease her out over time. But she is a sort of modern version of Tony Benn, for those who remember.
Right, let's have a look at the Greens. Once again, 7% of the vote, 1.9 million, and they ended up with 4 seats. So they're virtually in the same position as Reform in terms of numbers of seats, but got considerably less in terms of votes.
That's right. Again, they seem to have concentrations in certain, how shall I put it, intellectual affluent university type of areas. That's where they seem to garner their votes. I don't think they have a wide enough manifesto. I think some of their ideas on transition to green energy and the other things that accompany climate change are highly ambitious, unquantified, and frankly cannot be met by existing funding resources.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Finally, Clyde Conray, 0.7% of the votes, 194,000, but got 4 seats.
Yes, well, I refer to them as the Welsh Language Society. Actually, they are an enigma of Wales. There'll always be a few of them. I don't think they're a great force, apart from obviously on the cultural side. They have quite a sort of cultural impact, I think, over the years in Wales. But they're on the periphery. And apologies to all Welsh listeners.
Other sections of the United Kingdom are also available, so there we are. Okay, so let's look through the results as they were. Let's go down the PR side, the proportional representation side, and that would basically, it all goes into one big pot, does it? And then you sort of divvy it out from there.
That's right. I mean, there's without doing a lecture on proportional representation, Tony, there are sort of 2 ways you can do this. One is by constituency with some sort of transferable vote, or it can be constituency and nationally.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally find that and it's a problem in Germany, proportional representation, because some parties which should have long gone into cessation linger around under proportional representation. Other new kids on the block can achieve prominence without much thought. So I'm personally against proportional representation. I prefer first past the post. It gives authority. It gives a strong mandate. And coalition, or dare I use the Channel Island word, consensus government has its problems, but
we have noticed that. Yes, absolutely. And it remains an ongoing situation.
That's right. And I generally think that something like proportional representation, it will take a long time to work out the details.
Yeah.
And once it's done, it's difficult to go back.
Oh, very much so. But the
Well,
Liberals did have a go, didn't they, as part of
they
the
did.
coalition deal, and it failed abysmally.
It failed abysmally. So we I first past the post. It gives authority. It gives a strong mandate and proportional representation. We'd end up with coalition governments and consensus, and they change every year or two.
But the fact of the matter remains that 57.8% of the voters in that general election are unrepresented.
That's right.
So
But
let's just have a look at the effect
yeah,
of PR. Labour, that in reality, 411 seats, with PR 236. So they got
correct.
the vote.
Yeah,
Conservatives 121 seats in reality, but with PR they'd be at 157.
quite. Yeah,
So
yeah,
we can accept that. The
yeah,
Liberals, as you mentioned earlier, quite interesting because they got 72 seats, and with PR
yeah,
they'd only get 77.
yeah, yeah,
The Scott Nat, sorry, Ali, 9 seats, but would effectively have had 18. So
yeah,
let's then take a look at reform. And of course, this is the big gripe that Nigel Farage has got. And that
yeah.
is that he got 5 seats, but with PR, he would have got 94 seats.
That's right. And he would have been able to play kingmaker.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would have be uncomfortable with Nigel Farage playing kingmaker in the UK. It would be the apex of his political career, I would imagine.
Well, there we are. And the Greens would have gone from 4 to 42.
Yeah.
So we've pulled it all to pieces, haven't we?
Yes. I think we're going over the summer. I think the policies of the of Labour will have to be crystallised. We'll get an autumn budget in some shape or form where we know what the additional tax changes are. And I think the oppositions will not really formulate their policies in detail until they see what emerges in terms of proposed legislation from the Labour government. I mean, we've got the King's Speech today, and that will give clearly some indications of that. But I think we're in for a sort of a lazy summer in many
Yeah,
senses on
yeah.
the domestic front, Tony.
The thing is, of course, that the recess takes place very, very shortly, doesn't it? So
Yes, it does. Although apparently Starmer wants to shorten the recess, so it may only be a month or 5 weeks. But yeah, we are coming up to a recess. You're right.
let's go international. First of all, the United States and President Trump.
Yep.
That assassination attempt, whilst it was dreadful, will probably, sort of create sympathy, won't it?
Yeah. Oh yes. I mean, if the bookies are still taking odds on Trump, I don't know, but yes, he's going to be a shoo-in now. I mean, I personally think he would have just about done it previously, but the assassination attempt has done it, and all the legal challenges seems to be peeling away now. And you do wonder whether a lot of these charges, pardon the pun, were trumped up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it, in the States, the fact that the judiciary is political.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he has a Supreme Court. Gosh, you've got to go back to the 1920s before you had last time you had a strong sort of conservative leaning Supreme Court. I mean, even throughout the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, 80s, during the Nixon and Reagan eras, it was still slightly to the left, and he's done that, and that clearly has helped. I think the other interesting issue is going to see what what geopolitical impact, if any, his presidency will have. Leaders in Europe, UK, elsewhere will have to deal with him, whether they like it or not.
Do you think Biden will stand down?
Uh, uh, I would like to think he would. There are apparently some technical problems because all the money that has been pledged to the to himself and Camilla Harris, if someone else, then it can't be sort of reassigned to them. So it would really mean that Camilla Harris has to be on the ticket.
Yeah.
And that may pose some problems. But no, I think, I mean, poor old Biden. I genuinely wonder whether he'll make it till November, leaving aside any of the other external factors.
But in any case, if he was to step down, they haven't got much time, have they, to organise a replacement?
They haven't got much time at all. And he is resistant. There are some senior people, obviously, in the Democratic Party who want him to stand down, but he ain't budging at the moment.
No, not at all. Let's turn to Europe and the recent EU election. The establishment got quite a kicking, didn't it?
Well, it did, and I understand that Ursula von der Leyen is anxious as to whether she'll be re-elected. But yes, I mean, Europe is moving to the right. It's also getting more fragmented in its views. You've got the likes of Hungary, Poland have very firm views. You've got moved to the right in Germany, and you've had blocking mechanisms in France to stop the what's it called now, the Relais Frontière, or whatever it's called, the old National Front, blocking them from assuming power. I mean, I posed the thoughts to someone the other day that we're in the final days of the Fifth Republic.
Yeah.
Roll on the Sixth Republic, because one of the interesting things, one of the things that Marine Le Pen's party, if I could still call it that, want to do was to move control of the armed forces from the president to the prime minister. Now, France has a particularly volatile history when it comes to deployment of the armed forces. I mean, when de Gaulle came to power in the late 50s, there was talk of bringing the army in, and long time. My father used to go to business to France in the late 50s, and I remember him telling me that you used to fly into Orly Airport then, that there were tanks at either end of the runway. So France is a very fragile and volatile country, and it's only 8 miles from us.
That's right. And of course, you see it all the time with the farmers and, pensioners and everything else.
Yeah.
We have a theory in the family, which Christine propagated, and that is the reason that you get lots of gaps between the cobbles is so that they can pull them up and hurl them at the riot squad.
Yes. I might quote that one if you don't mind. But yes,
you'll have to copyright Christine on it.
All right. But no, they all segments of society take to the streets there. I don't know whether it's the Latin temperament, it's the DNA from the French Revolution or whatever, but even the worst protests in the UK have nothing like the sort of same violent and physical manifestations as they seem to regularly in France.
Yeah.
It's very fragile country
situation. Yeah, absolutely. And once again, Macron was a bit daft, in my view, to call that election.
Yeah. Well, he's. I mean, I must be careful of my language, but he neither physically or intellectually has the stature of earlier presidents like de Gaulle or Giscard d'Estaing. He's a little man who's come from nowhere, and I think he's going nowhere.
Okay, he'll probably come and shoot us on the basis of that. Yes. Not me, Gov.
He may come and invade Alderney.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it back. Take it
Yeah,
back. The Falkland Islands of the English Channel. But there you go.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So we've looked at France. We've looked at Germany. We've got to look at Russia, haven't we? And Putin's ambitions. I'm worried that this thing is developing in the Ukraine into a stalemate situation, just like World
Yeah.
War One,
Yeah.
and people are going to get killed unnecessarily. Is it time for a peace deal?
I I think there will have to be a peace deal because uh, I don't think Trump will have the appetite to pour in more resources in terms of armaments, money, and so on. I wouldn't rely on a united Europe to help. Some parts certainly will. Some parts, the Baltic states, Poland, are obviously concerned about their own territorial security. But I'm afraid Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, I don't think they will. I don't think they will sustain their push with Ukraine. So yeah, I think there will be a peace treaty of some kind, and it may mean that each side stays with the territory it's got,
Yeah,
something along that
yeah,
lines.
yeah, yeah. So Crimea would remain with Russia.
Absolutely, and one has to say that unfortunately Russia likes strong leaders.
Mm,
Whether you're talking about Peter the Great, Ivan the Terrible,
mm,
or Joe Stalin, they like
yeah,
strong leaders. And
mm,
whatever you think about Putin, he has manifested himself as a strong leader.
yeah.
Now he I think is mortal like the rest of us, and there's no obvious replacement. So that always leads to some vulnerability in Russia.
Mm, mm. Okay, let's finish off with Gaza. What's going to happen there?
Well, I think I mean Israel wants to finish off Hamas to the extent it can, um, although that fundamentally the roots of all this lie in Iran,
Yeah,
and
they feed the money in, the arms in, and
that's right.
they want to get rid of Israel, don't they?
Exactly. Now, the elderly Ayatollah Khomeini, he will. I think he's in his late 80s now. He also, I think, is mortal, and he will be going. And that may be a catalyst for change in Iran. But I think there would be some form of, I'll use the word, civil war
Mm.
before that happened. But Iran is the source of it, and yes, Israel can eliminate Hamas and keep Hezbollah at bay, but and uh, candidly, they don't want a government in Gaza which manifests itself in the form of Hezbollah or Hamas or similar terrorists,
Yeah,
and I can understand that. And I think some people in the UK should wake up to those realities. But as I say, that's a personal view.
because the Palestinian West Bank sector has,
Yep.
despite the fact that Israel has made incursions onto their land, for building, for extending the settlements, they've been relatively peaceful, haven't they?
They have. You get minor problem, but yeah, yes, they certainly have. And so I mean, there may be some deep influences there, but they've not terrorist influences have not manifested themselves in the way they have in Gaza, which frankly had really no government at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a bit of a grim way in which to finish, but
Yeah, it's not a happy outlook, I'm afraid, Tony. It's but the international geopolitical issues will be very high on all agendas, I think,
yeah,
for the
yeah,
remainder of this year,
yeah, yeah,
and I think they will be heightened as we move up to the U.S. presidential election, which is the big feast to come.
yeah. Robert, thank you very much for sparing me some time. As ever, I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. I don't think we've quite put the world to rights, but we've certainly given a few ideas, perhaps, as to how
No,
things might go. But there we are.
Someone said I should stand for the UN. I'd probably stand a better chance standing for the UN than I would for the States of Albany. But there we are.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank
Many
you.
thanks then, Tony. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.